So the other day we were talking about Anicca, and then you started talking about it in terms of uncertainty, and used that term, what if. However, as we were speaking, you said, I said to you, that's why Nibbāna is undetermined. We were speaking about Nibbāna. I said Nibbāna is undetermined. And you said, exactly, uncertainty is the undetermined. And I thought, huh? That's not what I meant, actually. And so if we can talk about that again, the undetermined. You said, like, uncertainty is the undetermined when it's purified of ignorance.
Well, no, just you start on a basic level, just colloquially speaking. If something is determined, it implies certainty. Uncertain things are less determined. Oh, it's not so determined, so it's uncertain. Well, the absolute pinnacle of the undetermined thing is Nibbāna Dhamma, the phenomenon of Nibbāna, the phenomenon of complete asankata Dhamma, as the suttas would say. So what, from the point of view of a mind that depends on certainty, that depends on anicca and permanence, and taking things personally, basically Putujana's mind, an ignorant mind, Nibbāna is the ultimate uncertainty, the most frightening thing, basically. But uncertainty is frightening only if you still take certainty for granted and put it first. So if you think things are anicca and occasionally they're anicca, without realizing that no, they're anicca always, that doesn't change. And your sense of anicca is only relative, like slightly less anicca but still anicca, so to speak. So that's why that like uncertainty is the main characteristic of Nibbāna. But for somebody who has developed Nibbāna, that uncertainty is just the universal nature of things. When the Buddha did speak to lay people or somebody who didn't have the right view, and they understood, because you know, what is it the Nibbāna that you teach? What's the highest goal of your teaching? And he would describe what Nibbāna is, and they would become distraught with fear, and fall on the ground, beat their breast, pull their hair in anguish and anxiety. Says that what this recluse teaches will kill us, will destroy us. So you train your mind, because if you train it, the uncertainty of Nibbāna, the dispassion of Nibbāna, will be the utmost pleasure, the highest bliss. But as the Buddha said, the neutral feeling, for example, needs to be known and understood.
Yeah, this is what.
If it's not known and not understood, it's going to be felt extremely unpleasantly. It's going to be felt painfully. The neutral feeling. So it requires wisdom to be able to truly recognize what neutral feeling is and find the peace in it. It takes wisdom for peace. Not just, I'm peaceful because the peaceful feeling arose in me. That's not really the peace we're talking about. So practically speaking, if you, even as a non-arahant, want to contemplate want to have a theme for your contemplation that will approximate the Nibbāna, uncertainty. The ultimate fundamental uncertainty. That's why mindfulness of death, one of the quickest ways for purifying mind of lust and reaching Nibbāna, also the sharpest way that can harm you. The other one, when the Buddha said that contemplation, like, it will not be for me, it might not be, and it won't be for me. And that's like, when he said, that's like the highest contemplative view, that would result in serious amount of dispassion and abandoning of the world that even an outsider can practice, somebody who hasn't understood the Dhamma. But the point being, so what would be the main characteristic of that view? Would be the uncertainty. It might be, it might not be. Either way, it won't be for me, as in it won't be taken as mine. Like what is the main characteristic of mindfulness of death that scares people a lot? Is the uncertainty, the implicit uncertainty of every enduring experience that you have here and now. And when the Buddha said, how is the mindfulness of death practiced rightly? It was when the monk described, I practice it like after an in-breath, I'm already practicing mindfulness before the next out-breath. And he says, yeah, that's That's as close as he needs to get. That doesn't mean, as I said before, that he's focused so hard on every moment of in breath, death, out breath, death. No, it just means that his context is so firmly established on the thorough sort of uncertainty that underlies his entire existence, that it doesn't lapse even for a moment of in or out breath. Doesn't mean he goes moment in breath, moment death, moment out breath, moment death, moment in breath, moment death. No, it means the context is so strong that even a little lapse does not occur. And why it is so strong? Because it is true. Because it is factually uncertain on that level. For in breath, you might not have an out breath.
You got to
So it's not about like boiling down to a moment to catch it. It's more like just sustaining the context and recognizing the blatant truth of your existence.
And it's not about fabricating that as an idea.
Sure,
It's not
sure.
about fabricating.
It's not about fabricating. That's why I say it needs to start like, oh, Nibbāna is the highest bliss. Yes, eventually. So how do you arrive at the highest bliss? Through a magical method and technique?
By letting the truth take root, take over.
Well, by recognizing basically as the whole Dhamma is, the universal characteristics of your existence, which are anicca, uncertainty, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. The whole experience is an experience of not self, because you cannot own that which is uncertain, because sense of ownership requires sense of certainty. So that's already a form of determination. So uncertain means undetermined or less determined, depending on how far you push the uncertainty. So if you want to contemplate a phenomenon that approximates Nibbāna, even as a Puthujjana, contemplate uncertainty. But contemplate uncertainty, as in start feeling it. Contemplate yourself within, basically fully enclosed in a cage of uncertainty. So there's no outside of that uncertainty, and everything that's inside you don't really know what's objected to from the outside. So you are fully uncertain top to bottom. Because what people would tend to do, same with the practice of anicca, is like, oh, then you just start determining the uncertainty over there, or determining anicca over there. In other words, you start determining what's the undetermined, which means it's not really undetermined. So when people go around, yes, everything is anicca, see, this is anicca, it's all anicca. Yeah, true, factually, theoretically, but practically, that's not the anicca that matters. Anicca that matters is on the level of your existence. And you wouldn't be able to just say, oh yeah, look, my eyes are anicca, I can see that. My ears are anicca, and so on. No, because you would feel that. If you start feeling your body being under a threat of its existence, even if you say or not say, these eyes are anicca, or these ears are anicca, you're going to feel it. Because it is factually anicca, and your life depends on it. Yet it's uncertain. So when you contemplate uncertainty, you will have to feel it. That's why the sila needs to have been established beforehand, not acting out of greed, aversion, delusion, because some minds will not be able to bear the recognition of what Nibbāna is, as they didn't when the Buddha told them. Like, if the mind is strong enough, it will not get distraught in the face of anxiety towards uncertainty. It will be like, wow, I better do something about it. Like that king, when the Buddha told him, like, the 4 mountains coming from every direction about to crush you, what are you going to do? He said, well, first there's mountain from the east, I'll run west, there's mountain from the west, I'll run north, there's mountain from the north, I'll run south, mountain from the south. Oh, well, in that case, I will quickly renounce this life, and, it's like, well, there are 4 mountains coming, so do what you see fit. He didn't lose his mind, obviously, but some people got overwhelmed by that.
Everybody can feel that uncertainty, and it's for Puthujjana, for someone who's not trained, it will be anxiety.
Sure.
And then that anxiety can proliferate into all sorts of phobias or whatever.
Exactly.
And fears and all kinds, But if you can handle and see that anxiety or that uncertainty, endure that uncertainty.
Because if you are able, and again, you will be able if you actually made the effort to practice sense restraint beforehand. The reason people become mad is because people perform mad actions. They do mad stuff. They say mad stuff. You cannot be mad if you don't act out madly. You're not mad then. Doesn't matter what goes through your head. If you don't act out on your thoughts, you're not mad. Madness becomes when you act out every single time. So if you have practiced restraint, you will be able to not act out. And the reason why this is necessary is because anxiety is not uncertainty. Uncertainty is not anxiety. But for an untrained mind, uncertainty is anxious. But for a trained mind, they go used to uncertainty and recognize it and started understanding it, practicing its way towards Nibbāna and complete cooling down on account of uncertainty. Because by the way, that's how dispassion happens. When the mind realizes this is not worth clinging to, this is not worth owning or acting out or possessing or indulging in. It's unworthy of that effort because it's so thoroughly uncertain. So the mind that does start practicing like that towards uncertainty, you're getting used to it. It means you will not feel anxiety towards it. So the anxiety aspect of uncertainty was due to your ignorance in regard to uncertainty, not because of uncertainty.
And you won't be becoming dispassionate if you don't actually sit with that, or
well, yeah, dispassion is a result of you basically seeing things rightly. It's not something you can just choose to do. I choose to be dispassionate.
I choose to do anatta.
Yeah, I choose to be anatta or something like that. Dispassion, relinquishing of ownership, will be the result of recognizing that which you are passionate towards and owning and so on, your existence, your sense basis, your whole body, your whole life, is not worth clinging to. It's not worth owning.
Yeah, but once you don't, then it's not worth owning. Let me not own it.
Yeah. It will be automatic. It will be that's what I mean. It will be a result. Like you have a headache due to some bacterial infection. You take antibiotics. You get rid of the bacteria. Headache disappears. You don't need to go and take a headache pill now, because the headache was the symptom of the infection, the high fever or whatever it was.
So going back a bit, when you're talking about neutral feeling. Feeling which is neither
pleasant or unpleasant.
Yeah. So it's, in a way, you can use that word undetermined. It's undetermined.
Well, already it's less determined.
It's less determined.
It's certainly not determined as agreeable. Well, you can say it's determined as neither determined as agreeable nor determined as an unagreeable, disagreeable.
So why is this important? Why must I?
Well, there are only three types of feelings. Yeah. For in Nibbāna, for an arahant, whoever has purified his experience, anagami, it's not like a new feeling that he has on top of these three. So the existence is the five aggregates. For Puthujjana, for an arahant, the difference is the level of passion and delight in the five aggregates, or freedom from those things from the five aggregates. So it's important because you start, as a Puthujjana always starts basically on the level of full infatuation, full ownership, full passion, full dependence on pleasure, full avoidance of pain, full ignorance of neither pleasure nor pain. And you see that, just like boredom is always like the practical example. So it's neither pleasant or unpleasant, but it's really unpleasant because there is nothing happening. There's nothing felt more determinedly, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like even you can see that even with people who become heavily dependent on sensuality, just slight reduction in the level of feeling that they have on account of sensuality will feel like, pain. It's still the pleasure, but not enough pleasure, it becomes extreme pain. Because you become so much more dependent now on even more determined feeling and more determined feeling and more determined feeling. And that determination comes directly from ignorance, from ignoring the certain truths, the certain nature of what's right in front of you. So, avijja paccaya sankhara. It's not a metaphysical relationship between the two. Not knowing the nature of the feeling, not understanding that it's not worth delighting to, you're automatically determining it as more and more delightful. Like escape from pain becomes more delightful than the actual pain. And again, people who become so soft mentally, so touchy, so sort of weak, they would then find pain just in a lack of pleasure, and they will try to have to get rid of it. So that's like the people who's like everything is comfortable, but then these tiny little things, and they can't let go of the minds, cannot let go of the tiny little imperfection, so to speak. And the entire experience starts to revolve around the pain on account of getting rid of that one imperfection, ignoring the reality of their experience as a whole, which is far more pleasant already. Because that's what they've been cultivating. That's what they've been determining repeatedly. Looking for faults, looking for pain, fearing the pain then obviously because you start seeing it more and more. It's like a dog who tries to outrun the post that it's tied to, and ends up being completely like revolving around it until the chain is so tight now it cannot move. Now all you see is just pain here and pain there and trouble here and anxiety there and over there. But first thing you have to do is not act out of it. Start practicing sense restraint. That will enable you to... You still have to endure it. Endurance of feelings is not optional. The only difference, the only thing that is optional is how you're going to go about it. See, if you're trying to get rid of feeling, your whole life is about finding pleasure, avoiding pain, and distracting yourself. You do that fully on the basis of having to endure these things when they're felt. Otherwise, you wouldn't feel them. If you choose to practice sense restraint and endure it on those terms, you still have to endure it. But there is a benefit of that because you can actually... sense restraint first can result in wisdom. And that's what the Buddha said. You replace the pains of a householder life, householder mind, with the pains of a renunciate life, renunciate mind. You replace them. It's not optional. Pain is not optional. Feeling is not optional. So then you replace the householder's joys and happiness with the happiness of renunciation. Either way, feeling will have to be there. You are subjected to it. You will have to endure it. So then it's just how you go about it. So the neutral feeling is that recognition that comes out of wisdom, that the neutral feeling is by far the best. Because pleasure pressures you towards more pleasure. Pain obviously pressures you towards getting rid of it, dealing with it quickly, addressing it, manage it, get rid of it. Neutral feeling, you realize, oh, it's undetermined. I'm undetermined in the neutral feeling. I'm not pressured. But then it's your ignorance of the neutral feeling that then pressures you towards distraction and delusion, as the Buddha would say. So when not known neutral feeling, you're going to be unpleasant about it. When known, oh, you're going to be very pleasant about it.
So to knowing neutral feeling.
If you want to know the neutral feeling, you have to start restraining the delight in pleasure, and you have to stop trying to get rid of the pain by default.
Because neutral feeling is a result of restraint. It's kind of...
Well, no, neutral feeling is on the level of three feelings. But you understanding the neutral feeling will be the result of restraint and seeing through the nature of the other two feelings that are more obvious. But neutral feeling was there anyway. You realize many times in the past, even as a complete Puthujjana, you had neutral feelings, but you never understood the value of it. Because for that, you needed the sense restraint in regard to positive feeling and the negative feeling developed beforehand, thoroughly. And then start seeing the nature of it through that endurance.
So you see the value in neutral.
Yeah, you see the value in uncertainty. You see the value in neither positive nor negative. You see the value in non-disturbance. You see the value in dispassion. You see the value in disenchantment. Because, most people don't see the value in dispassion. Like, passion is good. Provides me with pleasure, ambition, drive for life. And from that point of view, yeah, that's the householder joy. But in order to have that joy means you also have to be blind to the implicit danger of that same very thing that you're passionate about. And because if you do become aware of the danger, as the Buddha would say, you discern that the danger that's apparent, then you realize, oh, it's not worth clinging to. So then it's not a choice really, oh, I choose then to stop clinging to this or something. No, automatically you realize, oh, it's a trap. And no trap is worth being trapped by. So only time you get trapped by a trap is when you don't see it as a trap. So contemplate uncertainty as you being within it. Not as an object of your attention, but as a background of your experience as a whole. Start seeing the characteristics of uncertainty. And you develop that, don't act out of it, sustain your restraint and your sila, you will force your mind to become dispassionate, to become disenchanted. And that's when the mind starts seeing clearly, when the clouds and dust of passion disappears.
And so, the saying, Anicca, Sabbe Sankara Anicca. All
So all determinations are uncertain. So what does that then, how will then that make those things that are determined by those determinations be? So if determinations are uncertain, what is then to be said about things that are being determined by those determinations? They're even more uncertain. So sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha. So all determinations are uncertain and all determinations are unsatisfactory. Thus, everything that's determined, sabbe dhamma, cannot be owned. Sabbe dhamma anatta.
Determinations? What do you mean by determinations?
Well, practically speaking, determinations, you can get very technical about it, and you should certainly familiarize yourself with the meaning of that word, definitely, and in Pali in itself, just get different ideas and broaden your understanding just of the terms, so that you can then know what to recognize in your experience. But practically speaking, in very plain terms, determination would be anything that is a basis for your ownership, practically speaking. So say I'm very attached to my house, my family, my car, and so on. So you can now take that the joy that you get on account of it is determined by having the house, by having the car, by having the family. But then when you look at that, you can take even further. So determinations are not a fixed thing. It's more like determining a relationship based on how you feel, whether you feel ignorant, infatuated, avoiding pleasure, avoiding pain, pursuing pleasure. That's going to be on the basis of something. That basis is what determines your experience as such. So understanding determination frees you from these wrong things that your mind cultivates. That's why cessation of determination is Nibbāna. And so you could then say, like you're attached to your whatever. So your family, presence of their bodies, presence of your body, presence of your senses, presence of their senses, literally eyes and random organs, is now the basis for this entire emotional relationship that you have with your family, and your dependence and your ownership and fear if they're threatened, joy if they're successful, and so on. But that would be inconceivable if your body would not be there, if you would not die. So the fundamental one of the fundamental determinations, obviously, it's having the body, functioning body. So your body is the fundamental determination. That's why, like, mindfulness of the body, done properly, maintaining the context of the body as the basis for any experience in your life, with the recognition of the uncertainty of that determination, of that context, makes then whatever you experience on the basis of that context of your body unownable. So your own children, family, everything, it's still there, it's still perceived, yet now the emotional basis for your ownership is gone, evaporated, because it's seen on the basis of uncertainty.
All your life missions, your
everything depends on that.
All based on that.
Most people will have to start somewhere a bit more obvious, because actually people think you can just be mindful of the body. It takes a lot of wisdom to develop this level of clarity of the context of the body as a determination for everything. You wouldn't see a connection, basically what I'm saying. Most people would not see a connection between presently enduring body as such and their dependence on the emotional joy that they get on account of their daughter getting a degree in a university or something. They wouldn't see that. But there is the fundamental determination.
But when you see that determination as being anicca.
Well, when you see that your own body that you're not in control of is perpetually, the main characteristic of it is the uncertainty, then what doesn't matter what comes your way. You would need to pretend that your daughter didn't get the best degree at her university, but you would be unable to forget the container, the utmost fundamental background of that experience, which is uncertainty. In other words, it will have to come in eternity.
You wouldn't be able to get involved.
Well, you can again,
Passionate
as many times in the suttas, like anagamis was the layman, or even like monks, arahants. You still talk, discuss, help, give advice on mundane matters. It's not like you stop to recognize the significance of it. But what a parent who has suddenly become anagami or an arahant hears that the daughter is the best at university, what they will be unable to do is take the ownership of that experience as a whole. So they will be unable to lose the sight of the uncertainty. So they will probably, just help the daughter, rejoice in mundane matters, so to speak, but fundamentally be completely unmoved. That's why, look, when they would exclaim in the sutta, and yet my composure remained unchanged. Whether it was extremely positive experience or negative, the composure of the mind remained unchanged. Oh yeah, my only son was being falsely accused and killed, but my composure remained unchanged. Isn't this Dhamma wonderful?
Undetermined, yeah. The mind is...
Well, the mind established upon the undetermined, upon the uncertain, as the fundamental, like non-negotiable basis, the truth, the reality of things, the Nibbāna, then it's inconceivable to resist the uncertainty. It's just because resisting the uncertainty is uncertain. But you need to hammer that through that emotional barrier that your ownership towards things is. And when the Buddha did describe to some people what determinations are, he actually did. He referred to exactly this, the possessions. The king was determined by his king's possessions. Those were his determinations of his, stature of a king, his rulership, his obviously self-perception, his joy that comes on with all the perks and benefits of a king. He says, would he be a king if he didn't have a kingdom, if he didn't have the castle, if he didn't have the horses, if he didn't have the army? If he wouldn't be the king.
My sense of self.
Well, that's exactly, you realize, so your sense of self needs to have these determinations that you blindly own by not understanding their uncertainty. So the point to consider here, in this case, it's not like, oh, so you just go around throwing things away and say, I don't own this, I don't own this, I don't own this. All you need to do is find things that, because you can't throw away your body like that. You can't just say, okay, I throw away my senses and I'm an arahant. It doesn't work like that. So all you need to do is find what you do own, and through that ownership, start discerning the uncertainty of that thing. And that's going to be felt anxiously, at least initially. If the mind is developed, you will not suffer much on account of anxiety. But it's still the same route you have to go. That's when the Buddha describes sometimes there's either pleasant way towards arahantship, quick and pleasant, slow and pleasant, quick and painful, slow and painful. It's the same way. It's just how slow you're going to go and how much you're going to suffer on account of it or not. But it's the same way. Through the sense of ownership, discerning the uncertainty, the mind that has developed samadhi will not be moved by that uncertainty, will not feel as much anxiety. The mind that hasn't will feel a lot of it, or relatively speaking, depending on how much you develop. So samadhi, as I said before, is not measured by how peaceful and blissful you had your meditation session until the bell rang. It's measured how much you don't move in the face of uncertainty, in the face of sensuality, in the face of pain, in the face of threat, misfortune. How much is your mind like scraping for the walls to outrun the pain, or how much is it like the mountain that the Buddha described that doesn't move, whether it's the wind, rain, hailstorm, or whatever else? That is what samadhi is. And that's why exactly the beginning of the right samadhi, the first jhana, starts through fully surmounting, not being moved by the 5 hindrances, or the Buddha would say, by the joys and griefs in regard to the world. You develop that, samadhi of jhana. Not, I watch my nostril, I enter jhana, and then I don't get the hindrances and joy of the world, which is what people hope for. No. You work through that, then the result is samadhi, then the result is the pleasure of that seclusion and safety and relief, and that's what jhana is. So samadhi is the measure of immovability in the face of any pressure, positive or negative, but usually negative.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamental, that was exactly the reaction of people when they heard Nibbāna as the fundamental uncertainty. They freaked out. They had no samadhi. They had no sila. They had no samadhi. So they were completely overwhelmed when they understood what the Buddha was saying. What his teaching is, or that will kill me, that will destroy me, that is the true death of me. Because from Putujan's point of view, it is. And that's why sila, samadhi, panya. You practice sila, you practice sense restraint, you invest the effort, you grind, you endure. That is the samadhi already. Not, now I watch my nostrils to get the samadhi and peaceful experience. No, you already have samadhi to the extent you are able to not break your precepts. Because to that extent, you're able to endure the negative pressure, the pull of sensuality.
Which is going to, and the more you make things clearer, the more pressure you're going to see that is there. You can see that
the pressure becomes even clearer.
Becomes even clearer.
Yeah.
So I said it the other day that I start meditation, and if I'm doing it right, I'm supposed to have pleasant feelings, bliss, joy, rapture.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's actually the opposite.
It's completely opposite.
You need
Samadhi is the work that basically is born out of your work of your sila, work of your sense restraint. Not just so I keep the precepts, I don't think about them. Do I also practice sense restraint in between keeping the precepts? Do I just let my eyes see whatever they want, ears chase the sounds, body chase the touches? Or do I actually impose sense restraint on that? So sila, samadhi is the result of it. And then you see, so you develop samadhi, not by watching your nostrils, but by fortifying that which your sila created for you. And what's the result then? Sila, samadhi, clear seeing, understanding through what you have cultivated. But more often than not, okay, sila is over there, yeah, I'm a good person, give me the technique, let me watch the nostrils, let me have special blissful experience when my body trembles with joy and so on. And then the experience of that must be some sort of wisdom in jhana and my panya, and thus that's my practice toward Arahant. Completely upside down. You're just chasing another agreeable pleasure. You don't measure your samadhi by ability to withstand pain mentally. You measure it basically by, how deeply you were away when you were sleeping or meditating. It's fine if you get blissful experiences, but don't measure your samadhi by that. Quite the opposite. Take them with a pinch of salt. And samadhi is when my mind is throughout the day not moved by joys and griefs in regard to the world. And what is the world? Literally everything. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touches is the world for your mind. And your mind is not moved by any of that. That's what samadhi is. Not, I had such a powerful samadhi, I was unaware of the world for 3 hours, which is the same when I go to sleep. And that's my samadhi. No. That's just probably being asleep or switched off for whatever reason. Abandoning the joys and griefs in regard to the world and basically cultivating the context of uncertainty will compose your mind. Force your mind into samadhi is another way for saying samadhi. Samadhi is composing. Bringing it together.
Keeping it together.
That which is loose and scattered. So there's going to be some effort involved there.
Effort of
rounding
striving.
up, exactly, effort of striving to rounding up the precepts, the sense restraint, tighter, 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 and you have composed now what you need to see. So you want to do meditation session, sit down, and then see. Bring up the joys and griefs of the world and see how much your mind moves. Bring up the liability, as we often say. Oh, I'm fine now. I'm not grieving over anything. Could I? What if my next phone call is bad news? Will I be distraught? Do I know for sure that, as the Anagamis in the suttas exclaim, isn't it wonderful? My composure remain unchanged. Can I say that? Do I know for sure my composure will remain unchanged regardless of if the news that comes is my only son is being falsely imprisoned and just murdered, and my composure remains unchanged? Not that because I didn't hear the news rightly, or I don't know significance of my only son, otherwise she wouldn't have said my only son. She didn't engage in, it's just matter, it's just elements, it's just anicca. No, my only son that I've bred, raised, protected, a good person, falsely imprisoned by the king, falsely accused, falsely tried and executed. So fully aware of the significance of this extreme personal injustice, and the mind remained unchanged. Isn't it like my composure remained unchanged? So is that samadhi? Do you know that? Am I liable to things changing my composure? If so, that's your work. So unarisen lust, unarisen hindrances, can they arise and beset my mind and overwhelm it and make me run for the walls? Or have I developed my mind to be unmoved? Because if you're unmoved, that's when you get to see things clearly, not while you're running and shaking. First you need to stop moving. Stop overly indulging in things, moving towards them, stop trying to outrun them, moving away from them, and stop turning a blind eye and ignoring them.